Today we're going to start with where we left off on Tuesday with the Boston Tea Party. From there we're going to lead up to the first shots fired of the Revolutionary War. Questions to be able to answer. How did the colonists respond to the Intolerable Acts? These acts also are known as the coercive acts. These are acts that the British are going to force upon the colonists as a result of the Boston Tea Party. So because of the Boston Tea Party, look at what the British do by issuing the Intolerable Acts and how the colonists respond to them. Second question, what were three of the actions taken by the First Continental Congress? So look for the First Continental Congress. What were three things that they were able to achieve, or three things that they did as a response of meeting at the First Continental Congress? Question 3. What events led up to the first shot of the Revolutionary War? So again, we're looking at things that led to the first shots of the Revolutionary War. Things that happened before this shot was fired. Okay, so we're looking at events that happened before the first shot of the Revolutionary War at Lexington. Finally, what did the meeting of the Second Continental Congress accomplish? Okay, so there's a First Continental Congress. They are going to have a Second Continental Congress. What did it accomplish? What actions did it take? Okay. But again, we leave off with the Boston Tea Party. Okay. The Boston Tea Party was a form of protest by the Sons of Liberty to show that they were upset with the British government trying to force them to buy British tea from the East Indies instead of buying cheaper French tea. So again, as a form of protest, they dumped this tea into the Boston Harbor. Well, the king does not like this very much, and he gets Parliament to pass a set of laws called the Coercive Acts. The colonists call these the Intolerable Acts because they basically try to punish the Boston citizens. First of all, the Boston Harbor is closed. No one can bring ships in, no one can bring ships out, and it's supposed to be closed until they pay for all the tea that's dumped into the harbor. They also get rid of Massachusetts' government. The king takes General Thomas Gage, the British general, and appoints him as governor of Massachusetts. And now Massachusetts no longer has a government. It's led by a British general. A couple other things. Any official accused of a crime was taken to Britain for crime and not tried in the 13 colonies courts. The colonists disagreed with this. They felt that if someone committed a crime here in the colonies, they should have the right to have their trial here. The Quartering Act was strictly enforced again to have more British soldiers because of the uprisings. And then also the Quebec Act was something that already had been going on, but it took away the option for a trial by jury. And if you were committed a crime in the Ohio Valley region, you were going to be tried under the British court system, and there was not a trial by peers. Okay, all of these things upset the colonists. Okay? They looked at this more as a punishment for protesting and their right to be able to say that they did not want to be taxed. So the Sons of Liberty and other people, again, continued to spread this message across the United States. They used the Committee of Correspondence, and they used that, again, to unite in spreading the news through all the 13 colonies, explaining the injustice that the British were doing in all the cities. And a call then went out for delegates or representatives from these colonies to meet and discuss their common issues, their common concerns, because they were all seeing a distrust about the British government looking out for the colonists' concerns. These representatives, these delegates from these 13 colonies, except for Georgia, meet at the First Continental Congress, right, at this location right here, in this building, to discuss their concerns about Great Britain. Okay, a couple things that they were able to accomplish. First of all, they tried to pass a continued boycott known as the Suffolk Resolve, presented by Paul Revere. Again, this was an idea that you do not buy any British goods, that we encourage all the colonies not to buy British goods. Now, this was something that not everyone in the colonies agreed with, especially the southern colonies who had better trade negotiations with Great Britain. So again, these 13 colonies didn't always get along. They weren't the idea of united colonies per se. So the idea of these 13 colonies actually meeting is kind of new. One thing that was also decided is that they would start organizing militia, people or common citizens who would train, maybe one day a week to be soldiers. Right? But if they needed to, an emergency would be able to fight. They also based some of their arguments of why they should have their right to speak out and right to be able to have representation in the British government off of John Locke's ideas of life, liberty, and property. He was a writer of the time that spoke about natural rights of humans, that rights that every human should have. And then also finally they asked the British king to try to keep peace, to make peace between the British government, the British Parliament, and the 13 colonies. And then they agreed if this wasn't going to be followed, that on May of 1775 that they would meet again. Okay, King George ignores the colonists. Okay, he calls the colonists spoiled, and as a result, the colonists are going to prepare for war. Tensions continue to grow. More British soldiers are in Boston. Right, there's people who are working in the British harbor who are not working, and so with these people not working in the sight of more British soldiers, tensions continue to grow in the city of Boston and nearby towns. The colonial militias again continue to drill and prepare for battle. Members of British Parliament see this. They try to call for compromise, but again, King George III ignores these calls for peace. In a speech to the Virginia's government, even people down in Virginia, which were far away from the events happening in Boston, could foresee that there was going to be violence. One of them was a famous speech by Patrick Henry, who said, "Give me liberty or give me death," as he was talking about the wrongdoings of the British government there. John Hancock and Sam Adams, again, those leaders of Sons of Liberty, were building up supplies of weapons and gunpowder, and they actually were able to steal gunpowder from a group of British soldiers, and this led to the Massachusetts Gage, the governor, asking for them to be arrested, and so he plans for them to be arrested one night, which leads to the famous ride of William Dawes and Paul Revere and others to warn that the British were coming. Okay, so here is the British. They again are part of that committee of correspondence, secretly spying on the British. When they find out that the British are going to come arrest them, they try to ride through the night. There's Paul Revere, here's William Dawes, riding through the towns to warn that the British are coming. Paul Revere is captured, but Dawes is able to get through to other riders to spread the message. Okay. In the morning of April 18th, 1775, those British soldiers are met by 70 militiamen at Lexington. We don't know for sure who fired the first shot, and there was a little bit of confusion there. The British soldiers were telling the militiamen to disperse, to leave, and out of nowhere, someone fires their weapon. Again, we don't know for sure. The accounts kind of vary, but that shot marked the beginning of the Revolutionary War. The colonists were now fighting against the British Army. After Lexington, the British continue on from Lexington here to Concord, where they find no weapons because they had already been warned that the British were coming. The colonists had hid all the weapons or removed them. On their way out of Concord, they were met by more militia because as news spread, those militiamen continued to arrive in towards Concord and Lexington. And as the British were leaving, they were attacked with soldiers hiding behind trees, hiding behind bushes, hiding behind rock structures. And the British were forced to flee and head back to Boston, where they would bunker down. And soon, thousands of militiamen from all across the country would surround them at Boston. This leads up to the Second Continental Congress meeting because they have to prepare for war. Again, they had agreed to meet again, but the events of Lexington and Concord emphasized the importance for the colonies to meet again. They chose George Washington to build their Continental Army and head to Boston, where again we had thousands of militiamen waiting to because they were surrounding the British soldiers there. The colonists also tried one last ditch effort to ask for peace, and they sent out the Olive Branch Petition, a letter again, asking the peace or the King of England to protect his American subjects and remove troops from the American soil, and again, try to deal with this peacefully. When King George gets this letter, he ignores it and he declares that the Americans are rebels and that war is going to occur.